So, welcome back to the next session for this afternoon, the last one. We heard already the political environment of 5G, what is the vision, what is expected, what is the needs for 5G. We heard already what is CEPT doing in this context, and also with regards to the WRC. We will have in this session now a more in-depth view regarding the challenges, the barriers, and maybe also the prioritization of bands towards 5G. So what is necessary in that regard will be presented by two speakers in that session. The first one will be Robert Cooper, and I have the pleasure to work with him for quite some time right now. He's working in this environment of spectrum management for more than 25 years, and he's the CEPT co-ordinator for Agenda Item 1.13. So if you have any specific question of any technical nature or with any specific view towards the CEPT position, he's definitely the person to ask. And therefore, Robert, please, the floor is yours, and present to us our lists of bands, and also are these identified prioritizations suitable?
Yes, good afternoon. So my name is Robert Cooper from Ofcom UK and the CEPT coordinator for this agenda item. So I'll be reviewing the CEPT current position on 113, and I'll be discussing why we should prioritise bands for study, look at the results of the recent CEPT questionnaire, and look at the next steps running up to the WRC. So I'll gloss over the actual agenda item and the bands. We've already looked at that in previous presentations. Looking at the CEPT position, so we've only had one real meeting of PT1 to discuss the CEPT brief for this agenda item. As we discussed earlier, the PT1 looks at the CEPT brief, prepares the CEPT brief and ECPs. These are the European Common Proposals for the WRC. So our position at the moment, we support the studies running up to the WRC and support the identification of global bands for IMT among the bands listed in Resolves 2 of the resolution. So that's our current position. So why should we prioritise bands? I think we just touched on this earlier. This would assist an early IMT 2020 launch and deployment lead in Europe. It may help establish a global ecosystem around the bands favoured by CEPT. It provides early visibility and planability of the studies, and we note other regions are also prioritising. As we also noted earlier, we need to look at study all bands, and we certainly need a position on all bands running up to the WRC. So we did launch a CEPT questionnaire early this year, and we looked at the responses in September at our meeting of PT1. We had good responses from administrations and from industry, and people can see the full responses in the PT1 folder. That's document 99, and the summary of the responses can be found in the minutes. That's Annex 31 to the minutes of the last meeting. So I've prepared a few slides on a quick overview of the CEPT questionnaire. So this slide looks at the bands below 43.5. And as you can see, in most of the bands we've got fixed links. We've got heavy fixed links in a number of countries in a number of these bands. Looking above 43.5, there's less use above 43.5 in many administrations. Just to note, 66 to 71, there was no reported usage. That's quite interesting. And also 71 to 86, that was highlighted as a band maybe for 5G backhaul. So that was something to note. So these are some of the issues and challenges identified in this survey. We we certainly need to ensure compatibility with existing services in the same and adjacent bands. We need to protect, in particular, the scientific and passive use. There's certainly difficulties and cost of clearing existing bands. As I said, fixed links in higher bands will be required to support backhaul. Satellite systems also operate regionally, globally, and may require access to the higher frequencies. And also, as we discussed earlier, there's overlap with a number of agenda items that we need to consider. So one of the issues highlighted in the responses to the questionnaire was the possibility of a tuning range. I think this is quite an important issue for us. This would allow adjacent bands to be supported by the same equipment. This would also allow countries, regions to use a portion of the tuning range going forward. So I think this is particularly relevant for the 26 gigahertz band and 40 gigahertz band moving forward. So we did ask a question in the questionnaire about prioritisation for studies and received some responses as shown. I think in general it can be seen that the 26 gigahertz band, 31 and 40 were considered quite high priorities for study. And above 43.5, I think the interest was less from the responses. I think the only band that stood out for me was 66 to 71, and that's adjacent to the Y-gig spectrum and also available for use in the USA, I believe. So I think 66 to 71 would be a band for study moving forward. We did have a discussion at the last PT1 on prioritisation. A number of comments said that we need an initial focus, and some responses said below 43.5 gigahertz. Some respondents noted that they didn't believe any prioritisation was needed at this stage, and we all agreed that PT1 is contribution driven and will consider all inputs and all bands. So looking at the next steps, this is my travel plans for the next 3 years. It's going to be very busy moving forward. We've got 5D, that's looking at the spectrum needs and the 5G parameters. They're needed by the end of March next year. Again, for study group 3 and the other study groups, we've got the propagation models and the parameters of the other services. We've got ECC, PT1 and CPG. We've got the task group 5.1 and the CPM. As we noted earlier, the other regional groups, they're going to be very important for our preparations going into the WRC. And then finally, we've got the WRC 19. So that's a quick run through of my slides there. So any questions? Thank you.
No questions from your side to the initial prioritization? I see none. So, thank you very much, Robert. Very straightforward. So I guess we are making some time again, according to the discussions. The next speaker in this session is Ms. Cindy Cook from the Government of Canada. Cindy is the chairperson of the Task Group 5.1, and I'm very happy that we have her here today at this CEPT workshop. I think it's a great honor for us to have so many international guests as well, and I'm really looking forward to her presentation to the challenges at the ITU Task Group 5.1. Cindy, you've got the floor. Thank you.
I saw a red button and thought it was on. I was asked to talk about the Task Group 5.1, its structure, how it's set up, when the meetings are going to be, what we're going to be doing, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what's in the slides. And I'll be talking as the Task Group 5.1 chairman, but so that you also know, within Canada, I am also responsible for the 5G spectrum strategy for Canada. and as well leading our work on WRC 19 preparations. So I'm managing our whole process for all of the agenda items within Canada for WRC 19. So again, I think when Mario was up here, I realized I wasn't going to have to present many of my slides now. So thank you, Mario. But as Robert said, I'm going to skip a few because I think we've already seen what the purpose of the task group is, which is to do all of the sharing studies in the CPM text for the agenda item 113. And then again, I have here listed the bands to study, the ones that already have mobile service allocations and those that would need them if they are decided as bands that we would want to propose for identification for IMT. And then Mario also had a nicer slide than this, which showed what other groups are responsible for delivering to the task group by the 31st of March. Just to recap, because this is going to be one of my difficult issues coming up, is that some of the studies that we expect to have we're not going to, or the parameters that we expect to have are not going to be available to us. So that's going to be one of our big problems to deal with, I think, starting right away. But Working Party 5D is supposed to deliver all of the IMT 2020 parameters by out of their February meeting, and I still have hope for that. Other working parties are supposed to provide their technical characteristics as well. Study Group 3 added an extra meeting just to be able to do that.